Hey, viewers and viewresses, my name is General Red Strategist. Welcome back to So You're Being Hunted. I just probably said my name in a very garbled way just then, but it's an evening as of when I record this episode. Done all my work for the day and all that. So we're back here, of course, on our original map for the Literature Hunt Challenge. Now, as promised, I think we're probably going to actually wrap this up now, because I've been on this for a good few episodes, and I think I've probably found a good number of pieces of literature, whether that's letters, whether that's books, whatever else. So I think this will be the episode where we go over everything that we've accumulated, reread it all, get it all wrapped up, try and piece together the storyline from what we have. Obviously we'll flick between this map and my other one that you've seen over the last couple of episodes, and then, like I say, we'll hopefully piece together the storyline from what we have, a bit more of a kind of well-rounded picture of it. So if I proceed over here to my little hideout, and we should be good to go. So that's what this episode's just going to be, ladies and gents. Just going to be me doing a bit of reading, that's all. Well, hopefully for the most part. Then again, who knows, maybe it'll end up actually not even taking the majority of the video. So as you can see, I got a load of letters in here. Now I tried putting them obviously in an order. So in terms of which letters I actually do have, obviously I can just look at my sheet of paper here. In terms of numbers, I have 0, 1, 3, 4, 5, 7, 10, 11, 13, 14, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21 and 22. Obviously some of those are over on the other map, so I'll sort of read all the ones I have here, then I'll just kind of jump cut, go over to my other map. We'll read the letters that we have over there, then we'll come back into this map and we will read the books. Or actually, shall I do the books first? Okay, right, you know what? This is so professional, ladies and gents. I haven't actually really thought about what order I'm going to do things. Actually, it'd probably be easier just to do the books first, and then do all the letters, and then flick over to the other map, rather than doing the letters, flicking over to the other map, then flicking back to the... Yeah, okay, right, you know what? We'll do the books first, then. So, basically, as you can see, I've kind of ordered them all. The ones down here on the bottom line, they're the ones which technically have multiple parts to the story. And these ones on the other four lines are all just sort of singular stories. So we'll go through all of these first and foremost, starting with the bullies, ladies and gentlemen. To this gathering, only the bright and lively robots were welcome. Some of the best natured among the big machines, and especially gigantic engines and tunnel machines, might pay a visit, if they wanted to do so. But all the bad ones, such as poachers, sellers of liquids for wakes, who made men drunk, and all who, under the guise of utilities, were only agents for undertakers, were ruled out. The night dogs of the wicked hunter, the automated goats and various cruel devices and computational creatures living in the ponds and that pull cattle down to eat them up, and the immodest handsome bots whose bad behaviour was so well known, were crossed off the list of invitations. So, this is a funny story. I'll kind of give a few thoughts on each one as I'm going along. Hopefully I'll be able to do all of this in one episode, I'm hoping. But this is obviously a peculiar one. Obviously it's about the robots, and it says that there's all kind of robots out in this world, potentially, beyond the ones which you actually encounter in game. It would suggest that the robots have a whole kind of society and civilization of their own, maybe, with all kinds of different animals and whatever else have you. So, there's that one. The awful dream. I heard the dogs howl in the moonlight night. I went to the window to see the sight. All the robots that ever I knew, going one by one and two by two. On they passed and on they passed, townsfellows all, from first to last. Built in the moonlight of the lane, quenched in the heavy shadow again. Mechanicals marching as when we played, at soldiers once but now more stayed. Those were the strangest sight to me, who were drowned I knew in the awful sea. So, someone wrote a poem about the robots. So this could be a human from this world before said human was killed. That's the thing, in this world that you inhabit, that you come into. Because obviously the storyline of So You're Being Hunted is you play as a human character who, in an experiment, gets transported into this world, where there are seemingly no humans. It's all robots. So presumably the kind of robots have actually hunted down all of the human inhabitants of this world, so they're all already dead, but they're still hunting for them, or whatever. So that might be a poem written by a human, who knows. The haunted track. But was it something undead on that cold road, or was it other? Was it something that had made its way down from Uncle Twain's house by the Gifford, or was it something supernatural? I cannot say, but I can say that it was certainly unnatural, and such things should not walk the earth or any sphere of the heavens like it. Take heed, my words, because they are shaped on the lathe of or however you pronounce that, of experience. Take up arms against whatever walks the tracks in the wilderness. Hark! What is it that I hear on now on the road outside? A heavy footfall, heavier than a man. Amelia, my gun and coat. So that, I'm guessing, is another instance of something written by a human. This could be sort of like a diary entry or something, who knows? I mean, it's obviously got a title, The Haunted Track, but I don't know if that's maybe a story or if this could actually be just a title for a diary entry, I don't know. But it feels like maybe this was something written by somebody who encountered a robot and called upon Amelia to get the gun so he could maybe fight back against it. Who knows? So there's that one. So that, again, might be a tale of human resistance against the robots, perhaps. That's what I'm thinking. My gruesome encounter. That is where the mystery ends, because the thing in the cabin was not a man. It had never lived at all. It was something not of this world, but a machine which glared with malice of forethought and otherworldly intent. If it had not been for the surgeon and his red-hot poker, I would not have returned to Mary, nor have written this diary of my experiences on the evil river. Let this be a warning to anyone who would tangle with machines, be they on water or upon terra firma. There is something that knows no bounds, nor God's forgiveness, a malevolence which on the devil could have raised. Yes, I can compare it unto blasphemy, but I pray it cannot be remade. We should all make that prayer. So again, I think this is another, well, I mean, this one says diary, so this is a diary entry, presumably of a human in this world who encountered a machine, and, well, he said about the surgeon's poker, so probably he had a companion, a surgeon with him who protected him from the from whatever machine he encountered. So that's that one. That was the fourth one, wasn't it? Yes. And this next one, poor Billy Robot. That organ immediately took fire, and indeed, to tell the truth, kept burning night and day, winter and summer. Such was the sad fate of Billy Robot, who has been walking without stop or stay from place to place ever since, and in consequence of the flame on his nose and his beard being tangled like a wisp of hay, he has been christened by the country folk Will o' the Wisp, while, as it were, to show the mischief of his disposition, the circulating knave, knowing that he must seek the coldest bogs and quagmires in order to cool his nose, seizes upon that opportunity of misleading the unthinking and tipsy night travellers from their way, just that he may have the satisfaction of still taking in as many as possible. So this could be maybe like a folk tale or something written by the people of this world, presumably when the robots had invaded, but before they'd actually wiped humanity out. Because that's the thing. There are sources we've read, or rather pieces of literature, which allude to a war fought between the robots and the humans. So that might be something to keep our eyes for. Important etiquette. This one I don't think is a story essential one, but do not speak to tall men, they're easily offended by shortness. Tea should not be drunk after 6 o'clock for religious reasons. Wearing a crab claw in your hat is considered overly exuberant. Shopkeepers and landlords can widely be addressed as yeomen. Remember to retain your grip on a black umbrella at all times. Never discuss taxes. Always mention your support for the Crown. Your wife should not be allowed to tell allegorical jokes. Books are frivolous unless they refer to horses and husbandry of. No vilification of simpletons. Feign indifference. Do not mistake a gentleman for a lady when on consecrated ground. Foreigners should not be referred to without stepping outside, and smoking cigarettes is a fine way to seem disaffected. Now, I did have a thought at one time that maybe this is something written by a robot that was trying to blend in with the humans, but having said that, I'm not so sure, because all the letters that we have encountered before, which have been written by robots, tend to be written in a very particular style. You know, I'm sure you remember. Whereas this doesn't really feel like that. So this may just be kind of like a silly little thing that's been added. Something written by a human, I don't know. I'm just going to turn my torch on, if I can find it, so people can actually see. That was important etiquette right there. And the mechanical cat. But the mechanical cat only grinned at her, and went on tearing and spoiling and devouring the fish, evidently not a bit the worse for the blow. On this both the women attacked it with sticks and struck hard blows enough to kill it, on which the cat glared at them and spit fire. Then, making a leap, it saw the women from the house. But presently the mistress returned, carrying with her a bottle of holy water, and looking in she saw the cat still devouring the fish. So she crept over quietly and threw holy water on it without a word. No sooner was this done than a dense black smoke filled the place, through which nothing was seen but the two red eyes of the cat, burning like coals of fire. Then the smoke gradually cleared away, and she saw but cogs in the circuit board. So this is, again, probably, I don't know, like some of these books make me think that maybe some of these things are describing encounters with when the first sort of robots started to come through into this world. and it wasn't so much, there was a war between humans and robots yet. It was more that the robots and humans were kind of rubbing up against each other in the sense that there was friction, if you understand what I'm saying, tensions between them, maybe, something like that. God, my vitality is actually going down, just realised. Eat some of that. Right, next one. The Tale of Lazy R7G15. Once upon a time there was a robot whose name was R7G15, and he lived with his mother on a common. They were very poor, but the old robot got her living by decrypting secret files. But R7G15 was so lazy that he would do nothing but bask in the sun in the hot weather, so they called him Lazy R7G15. His mother told him he would have to work or be deactivated. This roused R7G15 and he went out and hired himself the next day to a neighbouring farmer for a penny. But as he was coming home, he lost the penny. "You stupid lout," said his mother, "you should have put it in your pocket." "I'll do so another time," replied R7G15. So, this is one of those ones. Maybe it's just like a humorous little tale, or maybe there is something supposed to be a kernel of truth in it. I don't know. You're saying R7G15's mother got her living by decrypting secret files. Who knows? Maybe these two were actually real robots or something who were living in this world, and old mother robot was decrypting secret human files or something. Who knows? I suppose that's one way of interpreting it. Hounds and their treachery. Hounds have long been a source of myth and rumour for the people of the British Isles. A black dog is an omen of woe or even death, while a blue dog is a kind of joke only understood by the Welsh. The true nature of dogs, however, was unknown until the 1890s, when a local squire, Princeton Hansley, began to study their habits and was able to prove that they had been meeting in secret to discuss the overthrow of their masters. This evidence of both a dog language and its attendant conspiracy made hounds into pariahs, and they began to live in their own villages at the edge of civilization. The beasts would make money by playing cards or by learning new tricks. Some say that one day dogs will return, then won't that just be ghastly? Interesting. Again, I feel like this is either a joke one. I don't know if this has any sort of bearing on the backstory of this world, or if, like I say, it's just a joke entry. Because we've seen no evidence of the dog people, let's put it that way. Who knows, maybe they are out there, if if ever there was a Surrey being hunted too. I don't know. What happened to Archie? Having moved to the cottage by the lake, I found myself reading a great deal. The only company there was my spaniel Archie, and so having tomes of Swift and Coleridge kept the loneliness at bay. It was on the third night that I began to feel a sense of unease, as if something in the air, or perhaps the water of the lake, had changed. Archie sensed it. Archie sensed it too, and began to spend more time on patrol around the limits of the cottage grounds. Each evening I would leave the door ajar for him, and return to the armchair and my books. Tonight, however, something happened. I heard the door move and pause on the carpet. Not looking up from my pages, I reached down to fuss Archie's scalp, only to be met with wet and cold. I started up, and confronted not a dog looking up at me, but a metal man on all fours. His head rotated round to greet me. So again, this sounds like a diary entry of when robots had first come into this world, and they were starting to freak out the human inhabitants a little bit. That's what I'm thinking. Okay, next one. Mother Paul's sack pudding. Ingredients for sack pudding: 5 connotations raw, pickled suggestion with the implication removed, chopped analogy, some syllogism without the rind, instructions for cooking. Place all the ingredients in a metaphor and begin to shake uncontrollably. Once entirely frothing at the mouth, lay on the ground and moan until nearby onlookers are forced to act. Again, I think this is just a little joke entry. I don't think this has any bearing on the story in any way. Our tremendous stench. Once the cause of the stench had been confirmed by the men from London, people began to arrive from all over the nearby counties. What a tremendous stench, they would comment to locals, and we would smile and agree and proudly tell the tale of how the all-pervading stink had come to be. Even the local alehouse, the Red Lion, was to take a new name in honour of the great smell, and it was truly the most important odour ever to have made its home in our part of the world. These golden times were in retreat, however, when a foreigner arrived from the east. Despite being dressed with gold and tailored clothes, the foreigner was evil, and he quickly found his way to the heart of our stench, and, so it's told, he took it for his people. This is a mysterious one, and I don't know how this figures into the backstory of the Surrey being hunted world, if at all. Maybe it's like a folktale thing, and it's not, it's just like a curious little piece of folkloric lore, maybe. That's been added to the world, I'm not entirely sure. It was that one, wasn't it? Yeah. Next one. The Robot and the Fool. After a while, however, the robot saw a stir in the direction of the farm they had left, and he quickly perceived that the loss of the goose was known, and that the farmer and his men were in pursuit of the thief. So, hastily picking up the goose, he overtook the fool, and pressed it into his arms, saying, "Dear friend, pardon a passing ill humour, of which I sincerely repent. Are we not partners in good luck and will? I was wrong, dear friend, and in token of my penitence, the goose shall be yours alone. And here are a few plums with which you may refresh yourself by the the wayside. As for me, I will hasten on to the next farm and see if I can beg a bottle of wine to wash down the dinner and drink to our good fellowship. And before the fool could thank him, the robot was off like the wind. So, this is a funny one. So on the one hand, this could be like a folk tale, but it might be one of those ones that's based on a kernel of truth sort of thing, in terms of a bit of backstory in the So You Being Hunted world. Maybe it's based on an actual incident involving a robot, a foolish human, and a stolen goose. Who knows? But having said that, I was saying before about how the robots speak, in a very distinct way. And if you look at this big sort of thing that this robot is supposed to have said on here, it's quite verbose. So I don't know. Maybe it's a factual account of something. Maybe it's just a folk tale. I don't know. It's a strange one. It was that one, wasn't it? Yes, it's this one next. The Golden Apple. Prototype 17 planted the 3 golden apples in his garden, and instantly a great tree bearing similar clockwork fruit sprang up. This tree caused all the district to produce an exuberance of robotic crops and fruits, so that it became as fertile and plentiful as the dominions of the golems, in consequence of the extraordinary powers possessed by the golden fruit. The automatic hound and the anti-gravity steed were of the utmost utility to him, and his reign was long and prosperous, and celebrated among the old bots for the great abundance of nuts, bolts, data, tax breaks, and fish that prevailed during this happy reign. So, again, not my kind of thoughts are that maybe it's just a funny little story, or then again, maybe it's supposed to have some significance. Maybe this is after the war with the humans, after the robots have exterminated all the people, and now they have kind of stepped into human shoes and become, they've taken up residence in this world. Is that what it's saying? Hopefully my voice will hold out for the entirety of this episode. Right, the robot worm of Spindleston Hugh. Soon the country round about had reason to know of the robot worm of Spindleston Hugh, for hunger drove the monster out from its cave, and it used to devour everything it could come across. So at last they went to a warlock and asked him what they should do. Then he consulted his works and his familiar and told them, "The robot worm is really the Princess X67, and it is hunger that drives her forth to do such deeds. Put aside for her 7 kine, and each day as the sun goes down, carry every drop of milk they yield to the stone trough at the foot of the Heugh, and the robot worm will trouble the country no longer. But if ye would that she be borrowed to her natural shape, and that she who bespelled her be rightly punished, send over the seas for her brother, automatic Fabian." So, this is another very peculiar one. Could be sort of like a folktale based on something that happened in this world. Maybe there really was a robot worm. Because, we've had lots of tales about troublesome robots in various guises. So maybe that's what it is. I need to eat another pumpkin. There we go. And turn off that torch. So it was that one, wasn't it? Yes. Right, next line. The Duke of Numbers. It pained the old clerk to think back to that time when he worked on the estate. He would rather leave memories of that night buried, just as he had buried his lord and master in the black peat of his ornamental garden. The Duke had always had an obsession with how a mechanical mind could be made to think, and it would not think in words and fleeting images like a man, but in numbers. "Algebra, Jeremiah," the Duke would say, "that is the brain blood of the new age." But the Duke would be too intimately acquainted with the brain blood of the current age to ever see such a thing come to pass. The old clerk, on the other hand, had seen the horror uncoil. Now, and this is another very peculiar one, because on the one hand, when I kind of reread this off camera, because I reread a few of them, this one I feel like could almost be sort of like an origin story of the robots. Maybe the Duke was an inventor or something, and did he create the first robots? And in doing so, he created what would ultimately go on to be the thing that kills humankind. But if that's so, I don't know. It depends. Like, where's the origin point of this story? Does this particular book, was it written by someone from this world? Because I was always under the impression that the robots in So You Being Hunted, they came from another world entirely. Because the thing is, like, in terms of who the important characters are, obviously there's you, and you come from a world, and you find yourself in this one after an experiment goes wrong, and you have obviously your butler, Walters or whatever he's called, trying to guide you back. But as you'll see from some of the letters that we'll look at later, I always wondered, did the robots come from this world? Was this the world they were created in? Or did they actually come across from another world? That's something which I'll talk more about once we get to the letters. But that's the thing. I mean, it depends on what the answer to that actually is. I mean, at the moment, I still think it's a case of the robots came from a completely different world, and they came through into this one, and they messed it up. In which case, maybe this story isn't the origin story of the robots. Maybe it's just a case of perhaps the Duke just sees the robots coming through, and is kind of fascinated with them from a scientific point of view. Maybe something like that. The Enchanted Machines. There is a table running along through the middle of the cave. The Machine King is sitting at the head, and his troopers down along in complete armour both sides of the table, and their heads resting on it. Their horses, saddled and bridled, are standing behind their masters in their stalls at each side. And when the day comes, the miller's son that's to be born with 6 fingers on each hand, will blow his trumpet, and the horses will stamp and whinny, and the great machines awake and mount their steeds and go forth to battle. Again, sounds like a bit of a folk tale. Maybe someone wrote it when the robots were coming through into the world. Who knows? Next one. A creeping horror. And so the cowled stranger and I walked in silence for many miles. We crossed out a familiar farmland and into the moor, where bleak skeletal horses picked among the rough vegetation and the ruins of shepherd huts long abandoned. As we entered our 10th mile, and twilight faded to the blue dark of evening, the stranger made a sound as if clearing his throat. We had still not exchanged words, and as now he slowed, I anticipated his attempt to break the silence, but he simply halted, stooped there on the black path. In time I spoke, and he did not reply. Eventually, I put my hand to his shoulder, and I felt strangeness even. He turned, and I looked into the shadow of his hood. Blood flew away from my face and heart as I saw what stood there. So I have a feeling that the cowled stranger in this one is a robot. Something like that. It's a machine. Something a little bit spooky. So again, this could be almost like a diary entry type thing. Someone in this world who had a somewhat terrifying experience. At least that's how I interpret it. Yeah, it was that one. Okay. Next one, Fortunate Jack. Well, they went on till it was about dark, and they began to think of some place where they could spend the night. About this time they came inside of a house even, and Jack told them to keep still while he went up and looked in through the window. Phone's ringing. 1 second, everybody. And we're back in. Okay, good lord. Interrupted partway through, didn't it? Which one was I doing? Was I doing Fortunate Jack? I think I was doing Fortunate Jack, wasn't I? Jack told them to keep still while he went up and looked in through the window, and there were some robots counting over their money. Then Jack went back and told them to wait till he gave the word, and then to make all the noise they could. So when they were all ready even, Jack gave the word, and the cat meowed, and the dog barked, and the goat bleated, and the bull bellowed, and the rooster crowed, and altogether they made such a dreadful noise that it frightened the robots away. By and by the robots saw it was all dark, and they sent one of their number back for their money. Before long he came back in a great fright. There's a lot of, there's a few books with a character called Jack, which is interesting, because obviously you'll see in due course we have the Jack the Robot Killer ones, so we'll come to those. Again, is this a matter of a record of something that happened? Who knows? Next one. Terrible forests of the universe. There is something out there in the water. It is but the first sign of things to come. My daughters fashion wards against bog creatures with wildflowers and locks of their hair, but such pastoral invocations will not save us. As the days draw towards a bitter winter, I am convinced that the appearance of lights in the meadows provide us with a warning. They are a harbinger of the terrible forests of the universe into which we now wander. My only hope now is that my family can be persuaded to abandon the village and head across the inlet to the town beyond. Perhaps there, in the warm glow of civilization, the strangeness will leave us, and we can look forward to unhaunted evenings, where the sounds of the terrors do not wake me in the dead of the night. Again, this is, I think, possibly something written by a human, a diary entry, describing something that's going on in this world, perhaps in the early stages of the robot invasion. That's what I think, at least. Okay, now that we've done all the singular ones, we come to the sort of two-parters, starting with the aforementioned Jack the Robot Killer, Part 1. Jack took up a horn, shovel and pickaxe and went over to the mount in the beginning of a dark winter's evening, when he fell to work even, and before morning had dug a pit 22 feet deep and nearly as broad, covering it over with long sticks and straw. Then he strewed moss over it, so that it appeared like plain ground. Jack then placed himself on the opposite side of the pit, far from the robot's cave, and just at the break of day he put the horn to his mouth and blew. This noise roused the machine, which rushed from his cave, crying, "You incorrigible villain! Are you come here to disturb my rest? You shall pay dearly for this!" It had no sooner uttered this than it tumbled into the pit. "Oh, robot," quoth Jack, "where are you now?" He tantalised the robot for a while, then with his pickaxe slew it. So this could be, again, a record of a person who fought back against the robots. Who knows? Or alternatively, it's a folk tale and a bit of a reference to the whole Jack the Beanstalk thing. You remember him, the old giant killer. Jack the Robot Killer Part 2. Jack soon went searching for robots again, but he had not ridden far when he saw a cave near the entrance of which he beheld a giant robot sitting upon a block of timber, with a knotted iron club by his side. His goggle eyes were like flames of fire, his countenance grim and ugly, while the bristles of his beard resembled rods of iron wire. Jack alighted from his horse, and, putting on the coat of darkness, went up close to the giant and said softly, "Oh, are you there? It will not be long before I take you fast by the beard." Jack cut off the giant's head and sent it via wagon to King Arthur. The king bestowed on Jack a noble castle, with a very beautiful estate thereto belonging, where he and his lady lived in great joy. So that's the second part of that one. And now, of course, we have the final books, The Golden Arm. Here was once a machine that travelled the land all over in search of a wife. It saw young and old, rich and poor, pretty and plain, and could not meet with one to its mind. At last it found a woman, young, fair and rich, who possessed a right arm of solid gold. The machine married her at once and thought none so fortunate. They lived happily together, but though it wished people to think otherwise, the machine was fonder of the golden arm than of all of his wife's gifts besides. At last she died. The husband put on the blackest black, but for all that even, it got up in the middle of the night, dug up the body and cut off the golden arm. It hurried home to hide its treasure and thought no one would know. Okay, so that's the first part. Second part. The following night it put the golden arm under its pillow and was just falling asleep when the ghost of its dead wife glided into the room. Stalking up to the bedside, it drew the curtain and looked at the robot reproachfully. Pretending not to be afraid, it spoke to the ghost and said, What hast thou done, even, with thy cheek so red? All withered and wasted away, replied the ghost darkly. What hast thou done with thy red rosy lips? All withered and wasted away. What hast thou done with thy golden hair? All withered and wasted away. What hast thou done with thy golden arm? Thou hast it. I nearly stumbled over on that last line for some reason. Okay, so that's that there. Again, could just be a little folktale type thing. If it figures into the story, maybe it's a case of the interactions between humans and robots early on before the war broke out, something like that. So that's all of the books, and actually just paying attention to time even. It's actually taken me a while to get through all of those. So yeah, we have actually found 100% of the books, like I say. So tell you what, we'll leave that there, actually, for this episode, for episode 320. In episode 321, we'll look at all the letters. So we'll make that the final episode of the Literature Hunt 2.0. So, hope you all join me for that then, ladies and gentlemen. Hope that's been quite entertaining to listen to me fumble around with those stories. There's certainly a few possible story-related things among those books, particularly the ones I think which sound like they are diary entries. At least that's what I think. But of course we'll talk more about what the backstory of Sir is in the next episode once we've read all the letters. So Facebook and Twitter links down below, along with a link to my propagandist channel. As always, if you enjoyed, don't forget, leave a like, comment, subscribe, all that jazz. But in the meantime, I'm signing off now. Goodbye everybody. Well, let's go. Oh god, just hit the wall then. That took off a fair bit of health there, didn't it? Need to be careful. Oh. Destroy that. Oh god, it's firing back at me. Yeah, come on. Got it. All your tricks. Let's head to the left. God. Pilot your way into these narrow nooks and crannies. There's narrow nooks and crannies. Oh, there's another barricade up there. Oh, they're firing at me. They're shooting at me. Yeah, destroy it. Oh god, they're hitting me. Ow. There's another mine here. The west mine. Let's do it. More baby glow boxes. In you go. Little ones.